So before I jump into the slide deck behind us, just want to pick up one key trend that I think ties and becomes two. One is about corporate America and innovation, and the other is about education. I think two very, very important considerations for any community. So we started this morning by talking about what if. So let's go back 20 years or so and say the 4 or 5 of us here went to a large corporation and said, hey, here are us entrepreneurs. We have this great idea. You know, will you work with us to take this to market or to work something like that? 20 years ago, any significantly sized corporation would have said, what the heck? We've got billions of dollars. We've got thousands of engineers. Why on earth do we need the 4 of you? You know, but that reality has changed. If you look at companies like BlackBerry, Blockbuster, Borders Bookstore, you know, that's what they said. And the market forces, innovation from other companies just took them over. So one point to note that I learned from looking at these 3 companies, BlackBerry, Borders Bookstore, and Blockbuster, is that if you're a large company and your name starts with a B, you're in trouble. So in today's world, large corporations are now embracing, startup and innovation companies. And if you look at the list of Fortune 500 30 years ago, and you look at the list today, it's a very different list, right? Many of the Fortune 500s of today did not exist 30 years ago. And if you look at the predictions of what's going to happen in the next 30 years, it'll be a much more dramatic shift in what the largest companies in this country are. What does it mean? Well, it means that the large companies need to become far more nimble to be able to stay on top. No longer can they say, we are Goliath now, and we can sit on this for the next 5, 6 decades. You can go up very fast, and you can go down very fast. And obviously, this has huge impact on communities. So if you are a community and you have a Fortune 500 anchor company headquartered over there, well, that's great for you. And if a new one comes in and becomes one, nothing better than that. It's just explosive growth. But there's the other side also. As they go up fast, they come down fast also. That means your community can be extremely adversely affected if you are not prepared to keep producing more and more of these companies to feed the needs of the local community. So it's become very, very, very important to note that we can't, if there are large companies amongst us, that isn't good enough. We need to be constantly looking for new ones. So here is where the public-private partnerships start coming into play, and a very important role needs to be played by everybody, not just the large companies, to keep an area robust and going. One more aspect I'll bring to the table here, which is this education system. And 30 years ago, I graduated, as was mentioned, with 2 technical degrees. Most of my cohorts went to work for large companies like IBM and Ford and GM and sort of like that. The first 6 months was invariably training. They were put in different areas on training projects, and then after that they were assigned a project and then given some mentor to work through and become a part of the company. And most smart young people were looking, for this opportunity to work for a large company, climb the ladder, and buy their white picket home someplace in a suburb, and get married and have a perfect life, have kids, right? That was the story. Well, today, fast forward now, at that time, an average person spent over 20 years in a company when they joined it, a large company. Today, that reality has completely changed. Average tenure has to drop to less than 3 years. And alongside that reality is out the window are all the training programs, because no longer financially viable for anybody to invest heavily in a new person when they are not even going to stay there for 3 years. So training programs are virtually gone, right? Now when IBM hires you, they expect you to start producing your second week. And oh, by the way, if you're not up for it, there's a door, and behind the other door, there are 5 other people who want your job. So that reality has changed a lot of things. Universities, on the other hand, have not kept pace with that. They're still living in the world of 20, 30 years ago, where they would produce some raw material, hand that off to a large corporation, and they do the needful. Today, large companies, small companies, everybody is looking for skills that they can utilize immediately. And schools, universities have not kept pace with it. Not to mention the fact that the cost of education is completely out of control, and there is no ROI against it. On another time, another day, we can talk about that, how even top universities and the amount of debt they are loading on these young people, how unsustainable it has become. Conversation for another day, another time, and I'll jump into this deck right here.
The geography of innovation is shifting. To find the innovative economy 20 years ago, a worker needed to drive to a secluded research park, work in isolation, and keep ideas secret. Today, proximity is everything. Workers want to be in urban places that are walkable, bikeable, hyper-caffeinated, where they can bump into other workers and share ideas. Firms also want to be close to other firms, research labs, and universities in collaborative spaces so that smart ideas can be turned into smart products for the market. Innovation districts are this century's productive geography. They are both competitive places and cool spaces, and they will transform your city and metropolis.
No worries. So let's talk about a few other trends. So please kindly keep asking questions so we can make this more of an interactive session. As you will see from this list, that a number of these things have already been talked about this morning. So what's happening in communities like this one, right? It is definitely, a switch from focusing on baby boomers, which was the largest, segment of population until just last year, and now focus to the millennials. And we all know that what baby boomers wanted and what millennials want is completely different. And places like this one, really, which are not urban cities, neither are rural areas, but usually referred to as suburban, right? That reality is no longer fitting the needs of millennials who want work, live, play. We've heard this all morning. So communities must do something to shift and change to be able to draw, retain, and keep these people, especially have them spend their discretionary dollars also in the city. Normally what happens is, people who are living in suburbia, especially the millennials, will go spend their dollars in downtown, right? Because they want work, live, play. Anyhow, so tech agnostic to tech enabled. There isn't a job anymore that does not require technology. Only this morning we were having this conversation that learning to code has become as important as learning math or learning how to read and write English. If you don't have that skill, you are going to be a liability no matter your white-collar job, your blue-collar job. Everything requires technology. The change in agriculture, if you look at, and how technology is getting embedded into it, it looks like an ag company will look like a tech company. So there is technology in everything. There is no longer a choice that should I get exposure to technology, whether you want a technology career or not. No matter which career you go to, that's where you're going to end up. This line between white collar and blue collar is starting to fade again, which probably is a good thing, right? Hands-on stuff is becoming far, far more important. Technologists are looking to build stuff. And in every aspect and every job, you will be building stuff now again, which we had moved away from. And we talked about that when the gentleman from the school was presenting. Career paths. They're saying millennials are going to change their jobs or change their careers 5 times before they retire. So all the more need for an education for life plan. All the more need that we need to move away from debt for education, which has become, I think, this country's biggest challenge. Corporate to entrepreneurship, we just talked about that. Entrepreneurs are being drawn in by large companies, small companies, and individuals themselves looking more and more in that direction. If you look at what millennials want versus what baby boomers wanted, people, my cohorts, you'll see that the millennials are looking they want independence, they want depth in what they do, and most importantly, they want a purpose in what they're doing. This is very, very different from at least my generation that I recall and what our objectives and intents were. Look at the transportation infrastructure. The change that is going to come from autonomous vehicles is unimaginable. But let me take the game one level upwards. If any of you were at CES this year in January, Chinese brought in a demo flying car. If you haven't seen it, you can just Google it, right? It's not that far away. So and the price point they're saying, they haven't announced the exact price, is very manageable. So just imagine what's going to happen with autonomous cars and with flying cars to our entire transportation infrastructure. It's just a landline versus wireless. That paradigm is around the corner in transportation. The legacy and the fantastic transportation that communities have invested in, their value, make change completely. I don't know the answer. Nobody knows the answer of what all these massive changes are going to bring about. But one thing is for sure, it is not going to be what it is today. Our needs for the kind of vehicles and all that is completely going to change. Private versus public. It is going to be essential now for everybody to work together. Those are the communities that are going to thrive, that are maximizing the resources of a certain area. That did not used to be necessary. Corporates work separately, government works separately, nonprofits work separately. Everybody is now going to have to pull together and say, how can we make this community more effective? Again, I think that ties into the siloed approach also. Now everything needs to be looked at from an integrated perspective, so bringing in all these stakeholders together, becoming more and more and more important. A lot of people have started using this term, the new urban. That's where we're all moving to. If you want a real example of what this new urban looks like, all you got to do is look at the entire stretch between San Jose and San Francisco. The entire stretch. There used to be small cities all along that stretch. Now every one of them has work, live, play. Right? There are big corporations there. You can entertain yourself, nightlife there, excellent restaurants there, and you can live over there. So that is what the shift is going to have to be for communities across the country who want to get ahead and stay ahead. So this is what we define to be the components of, yes, sir.
Quick question about some of this. What I didn't notice up there is what we term localization. The localization of a global community within the new urban setting. Do you see that as an influencer as well?
Oh yeah, so I think the way I see that as that each city will have to figure out what its assets are. And what are the areas that it should focus on. You cannot be everything to everybody. It is such a competitive world out there that you will not be able to go ahead if you say, I'm going to do everything. So the localization in my mind absolutely comes in that way, that you have to take an inventory of your physical assets, your intellectual assets, your community assets, all of them, and say, we have to pick certain niche areas that we must focus on. Now in economic development, this theory has been there for a couple of decades. They call it clustering, right? And you know, for a while now, most leading economic developers have already moved on to that clustering strategy of saying, let's take inventory of our assets and build something. It's just becoming more and more important in my mind. And people's desire to live in a certain place will become a very, very, very important factor. And if you talk about what the millennials want in order to live in a certain place, then they want work, live, play. So you'll have to have an integrated approach to making something happen. So I completely agree. So these five things I think has been talked about this morning already. Again, what our learning from our research really is that you cannot take an approach and say, I'm going to attack one of these. I'll do city innovation only, or I'll do corporate innovation only, or I'll do transformation of education only. Unless they all tie together, and they do tie together in many different aspects. So that's where you can become the community that's able to thrive and grow faster than the others. A lot of these things we've already talked about, heard about, this move towards rural to urban, and I will just call it rural to new urban, right? Because people are going to be living in what used to be suburbia is just going to become new urban. Again, I think I'm not going to dwell too much on it. We all are talking about this subject. We all know that the importance of millennials is becoming more and more important. And again, this has been talked about most of this morning as well. You all know it. Same. I'm going to skip through these slides a little faster so we can have a more of a robust conversation, get your thoughts and ideas as well. So there are some examples here that are international. I'm just going to skip over them. And to draw in, to become a modern city, that's how you're going to draw in the large companies, which, by the way, even though everybody talks about it, that it is the entrepreneurial companies that are job creators in today's environment, but the entrepreneurial companies need the large companies. If you ask the entrepreneurial companies, what do you need the most? The first thing, obviously, usually money, and the second thing is customers, large customers, right? So we can't say, oh, let's ignore the large companies, they're the net negative in job creation, I don't need to worry about them. Not true. If you don't have large companies, or no, you're not engaged with large companies, your entrepreneurial companies are going to suffer and not have the same opportunities. So I'm skipping over the international examples. There are 2 or 3 of them. So again, we've talked about this, but just some more points to note. This deck will be in the package that Sarah puts together, so you'll be able to see it. It's nothing different here than what I've already heard this morning and in sidebar conversations, so I'm not going to dwell on this one. Again, some more detail to that. Some aspects of it, health has been talked about. I will mention one thing on health, the comments that I heard today, that people are no longer living 3 extra years after they retire on the average. They're living 20 extra years. I say not true. Not true by far. If you look at the current research out there, is saying that somebody born today can expect to have a robust, reasonable life for 150 years. Right? I mean, we're not talking about being a vegetable and laying in bed and not being able to do anything. A robust life of 150 years. This is game changing, and we're not talking about a life of tomorrow. This is somebody who's born today. We've got artificial skin these days. You're growing limbs in the labs. I mean, they're saying the plaque on our brain as we get older gets settled on it, so we become a little slower and all that. They're saying they've made now a vacuum that can suck it all out of your brain so you can have that, and all the stuff with stem cells and all that. I mean, it's a brave new world. So just imagine the economics of an environment where the average person is living 120, 130 years, and it can be productive. So I think the whole issue in health, and I'll talk about in the next couple of slides also, of how that's game changing. IoT. So in my mind, there are 2 things that have already happened in my life that have changed everything. The first thing was a cell phone, and the second thing was the internet. It dramatically changed every human being's life and every business out there. It changed it fundamentally. I see this as a 3rd new wave coming our way. IoT, Internet of Things. If you don't know about it, start Googling. This is going to be the most important thing in my mind that I have seen in my career, and it's going to change everything in an even more dramatic way and even faster. If you look at a year-old research from Gartner and McKinsey and all that, I think Gartner came out with the first one and said this market is likely to be $1 trillion between 2020 and 2025. Soon thereafter, McKinsey came out with a study and said, no, $7 trillion. GE last month came out with a study which says it's $25 trillion by 2025. These, I don't care if you discount them, you say, oh, this is exaggerated, like many bubbles are and all that stuff. True, true. No matter how much you discount it, this is a massive tsunami. No matter what you do in your life, IoT is going to impact you. This chair sitting over here, if somebody moves this chair, the next door will send you a text saying, I have been moved from the main room to the side room. I mean, your shoes, everything. The price of sensors is gone down to that degree that it's financially viable to have a sensor on anything, disposable sensors. I'm working with a healthcare company in Colorado who's working on this pill that you will swallow every morning. And it'll tell you the entire blood chemistry inside your body all the time.
Vic, I have a question for you over here.
Yes.
So you're talking about this enormous market that's coming for IoT. Tell us about the companies that are going to be participating in that market.
Well, Stan, that's a great question. In my mind, there isn't a company that's not going to be involved. We launched a community, we call it Tech Riot, a little play on IoT, right? Started 8 months ago with Aero Electronics, which is one of the largest Fortune 500 in Colorado. 8 months ago, we had done a similar thing for health 4 years ago. How long it took to get in 4 years in digital health, we've already gotten to in IoT. We got 25 other Fortune 500s now involved in this project since we started 8 months ago. There is not a company that is not involved in this business because IoT, as you can just imagine, that if you had a sensor on every possible thing because it was so cheap, right? And you had a way of taking information from that sensor to a local hub in a room, like why you have Wi-Fi everywhere, right? And then from there it goes up to the cloud. Now you've got information that we couldn't imagine only some years ago.
So the companies that are going to be participating in IoT are basically everybody, but talk about startups and the role of startups in this new market.
Thanks for raising that point. Very critical. So all this research I just talked about, here's what McKinsey said. McKinsey said, well, they had said a year ago is 7 trillion, right? But the more important fact, Stan, was that they said that half the companies that will tap this revenue have not been formed yet.
Half the companies.
Half the companies that have not. So just imagine the opportunity for any community, including this community. What is this opportunity where there's trillions of dollars of a market and the companies who are going to tap half this revenue could come right from your neighborhood, right? But how will that happen? That will happen only if the players come together, the large companies, the small companies, the government regulation, because it's going to change everything.
The
right?
angel investors, the venture capitalists.
Everybody pulling together, coming together, focusing on it, and just like we talked about that clustering concept and all that, you can't be everything to everybody. Find your niche and focus on it, and the opportunities of wealth creation, job creation, company creation. We know the craziness that happened when the internet came about. This is going to be crazier than that.
So talk a little bit about the environment that startups thrive in. What's, you had a slide earlier that talked about the trends and the things that are changing. It's going from corporate to entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of different changes. People aren't going to be going to work in the big company anymore. If they're working for a startup, where do they go to work?
So let me just go back a slide and talk you through it. So I'll talk about startups, and as well, we have a few more slides coming up after the next few. But let's talk about the money for the startups. right?
Okay.
I mean, so I have lived in Denver since 1994 now, so over 20 years, and have been involved in policy making, like I said, during this entire time, 4 governors, several mayors and all that stuff, stakeholders in many different organizations and all that. Almost every time, and I personally have built up a network in Silicon Valley. I go to Silicon Valley the last 15, 20 years, once a month at least. I have a network of VCs, angels, and corporates there that I nurture, and I keep going back there for one reason or the other. So invariably, every governor and every mayor, the first thing on their mind is, can you take to Silicon Valley so we can meet with venture capitalists to bring them to Colorado, have them open up an office in Colorado. And I've gone with many governors and I've gone with many mayors to Silicon Valley, met with these VCs, especially the VCs. So the interesting thing, last few years, our current governor and our current mayor, I told them, listen, this is a waste of time. This is a complete waste of time. None of these venture capitalists are moving to Colorado. Colorado is amongst the top 5 states to get venture capital, even though in our own state, we have hardly 10 that invest actively. Not many venture capital firms over there, okay? So I told them, spoken to so many of these people, they are not moving to Colorado, okay? Forget about having them move to Bradenton. Okay, no offense meant or anything like that, but Colorado is a bit ahead right now, right? So that is boiling the ocean. They have their own economic model, and it's so compelling for them to be where they are not going to a secondary or a tertiary place. They're not going there. But there's great news. The first one, which I suggested to our previous ones, was really that focus on angels. There's $20 billion of investment that goes in from VCs every year, and there's $20 billion of angel investment, and angels are local. And every community has angels who are there, who need to be educated on how to invest in startups, because startups are high risk, and if they are not educated, then they are extremely disappointed after they make a bunch of investments and they lose every single penny in that. So if somebody has not educated them, then that's a really bad situation because they'll never come back, right? I consider myself a sophisticated angel, and if I look at my track record of angel investment, it is so pathetic I don't even have numbers to tell you. Most of the time I've lost money in it, yet I still get sucked in through somebody's technology. I drink the Kool-Aid and I end up doing it again and again, even though logically I'm saying, based on my track record, I should not be touching this thing, right? So that's not an easy thing to do, but people still invest for various reasons, and tapping into that, educating that angel base so they can cluster together also and become a more powerful investment body and all that is essential, right? However, this new trend that has emerged just recently is going to trump it all and really become more of an equalizer than anything has ever been before in terms of funding, which is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding has already exceeded venture investments, and it is going to become the mechanism that people are going to invest in, the way that people are going to invest in. So great news for communities such as one that I live in and this one right here, because we don't need to spend all of our time trying to convince some VC to come and open up an office here, which is impossible in the first place. Now we can focus our efforts on learning how this crowdfunding thing works, educating our entrepreneurs, educating our angel investors, and starting to make that happen, which is possible in every community. So that's why in our model, one of the key things for entrepreneurs really is that access to capital. So they have an equalizer. If you don't have very many VCs here, it's okay. Let's use that channel to try and get capital for the ideas that are vetted and are great ideas. So I just wanted to mention, this talks about IoT, but this has triggered the thought after your question. There are a few more slides on entrepreneurship, but really quickly, I already mentioned this thing, this mobility thing. Honestly, it's unimaginable, what is going to happen when the car can drive itself and park itself and drop you off. Just see what Uber has done. Just look at the fact of how, Uber has not taken just the market of the cabbies. No. That's a small part of it. The big part of it is it's created a new market. That people who would not have taken a cab are now taking cabs, especially those who want to go at night and party and all that, and the consequences of getting pulled over when you've had a few, right? We all are familiar with somebody or the other who's gone through that experience, and it is a horrible experience that impacts your life, right? It's become so easy and it's so inexpensive. Just yesterday when I flew in, I took an Uber from Tampa airport to here. It cost me $40. I mean, I've been here before on a cab, not exactly to Bradenton, but close by Saratoga, and I know it was over $100, right? That coming on a cab. So I mean, it was so easy, it was so simple, and last night I found out that I hadn't booked a hotel when I got to the hotel last night. And my fault, somebody in the office had been asking me and I hadn't done it. Well, I just pulled out my cell phone, went to hotels.com, in less than a minute and a half, I had a reservation 0.5 miles away at the Marriott Courtyard, right? And I called an Uber again and just got in there and was there in no time, right? So
you could have walked to the Marriott from where you were.
If I didn't have two bags, I probably would have. But anyhow, even for that short of a distance, it worked out just fine. I knew exactly when the driver was going to show up. So it has changed the game. The company is worth $50 billion now. We all know that, right? I mean, and so we don't know what's going to happen. It's not like we need to plan for this specific thing now. We really do not know what's coming around the corner, and that's what we need to be prepared for, that we don't know anything. That's a game changer. That, oh, here's my target, I need this kind of skill, I need this kind of stuff, let's put this infrastructure. Okay, we know how to do those kinds of things. We know planning, long-term, medium-term planning. This country is darn good at that, one of the best, right? So we can do that. But have we really prepared ourselves for, we don't know what's around the corner. What's going to happen next? And that's what communities like this will need to focus on. That whatever we do will need to have flexibility in it and be able to switch, change, adjust. And what that means is all stakeholders must be already working together. Already working together. You can't say, I'm going to convene somebody now and 3 years I'll have a plan. Good luck. By the time you have a plan, that plan will be outdated. Right? So vehicles I say specifically because each one of us can understand. The buses, the system of buses, we have a great light rail system in Colorado. Right in our offices, we have the innovation team for our city of Centennial, which is right adjacent to Denver. Okay, they got a multi-million-dollar Bloomberg grant to look at innovation for cities, and they've been working. They sit in amongst us. We have conversations all the time, and it's incredible. It's incredible how everything is changing now for this city of Centennial because of looking at what the future might bring. Don't know if it'll bring that, but it might. So this green stuff, you guys have heard about this. I'm going to skip this. Again, another example. Just to tell you, if somebody have not been to Shanghai, I'm from Pakistan. I came first time to the US when I was in 3rd grade. Stopped in London, Paris, and Rome, and then came to Manhattan. So my uncle was going to school at Pratt Institute, and my mother and my 3 siblings, we were coming to visit. And I was the first kid from my class in my school, 3rd grade, who was come to the US. Okay, so here we are, go to these 3 great cities, and we land in Manhattan. And from that point onwards, me and my siblings, we forgot that we went anywhere else. When we went back to Pakistan, we said we went to America. Nobody went to London, we went to Rome, nothing, because the buildings were so much more bigger. At that time, the roads did not have potholes in them. Believe me, in New York, right? So, of course, a different story today, right? So it was, it was the Macy's toy store. Oh my God, that was the image that's still in my head. As a kid, I couldn't have imagined that many toys existed in the entire world, let alone all in one place, right? I mean, it was an incredible experience of going anywhere else in the world and coming to America, particularly Manhattan, right? Today, if it's from the same school, if a kid comes to Manhattan, they're not going to be impressed. Not a chance. Maybe Dubai, where there's a ski slope and there's 115 degrees outside in the mall. Yeah, maybe Shanghai. Yeah, their skyline, oh my God. It's mind-boggling. Those of us who live in this delusion that we are still on top of the world need to go and visit these places, right? So many countries have gone well beyond our infrastructure, and we are living in the world of yesterday, right? Now, in innovation and entrepreneurship, we're still far ahead. We're still far ahead. But we won't be if we don't solve this problem of education. We will not be. Today, the kids are graduating with $60,000, $80,000 of debt and really, really no skills to make enough of a living to pay down that debt. It's destroying their lives and it's destroying the lives of their families very often, because they are taking all of their savings and putting them into the education thinking that I'll give my children a chance that I got. And let me put everything into it because this is the chance for their future. They don't know they're burning their money. It's worth nothing. The ROI on education is zero in my books. I've tried to convince my own kids, don't go to college. Take that money and become an entrepreneur. Become an entrepreneur, you'll learn in 3 months more than you'll learn in 4 years. My son is a senior in CU Boulder. Apparently they call it, he got a business degree. I call it a degree in intense partying. That's what he has got. Non-stop partying. And he has learned those skills now of not getting up in the morning on time, stacking all the courses in 2 days of the week, so 5 days he can sleep in till afternoon, until the afternoon, right? Learned all those tricks, right? And now I don't know what he's going to do when he has to enter the job market, because he'll have to unlearn all of these things.
He'll form an IoT company.
That's what I told him a few years ago. So education, because I really, 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 really think this is the most important problem we must solve. Okay, so when I first got involved into this, I thought this was a problem for the bottom half of the pyramid. Those people, families who couldn't afford this unbearable debt for college education, they were the only ones suffering. It is not the case. Okay, so let me give you 2 examples that are shocking, or shocking for me at least. So I met this young lady in Silicon Valley who had just finished her dentistry. Both parents were doctors, and she had just come back from, I think, vacation, Bahamas or someplace, for like 4 weeks straight. And she was saying, oh my God, after 12 years or whatever, 14 years, oh my God, a vacation, this was awesome. So I'm telling her, I said, that sounds good, you should have said more, you deserve it, you put a lot of effort and time into it. So she says, well, my parents paid for most of my education, but I took some loans, and now I feel bad asking my family for money. So I need to get a job so I can start paying down my own money and my own bills and all that. So that's understandable. Sure, sounds good. She says, I don't feel so bad. My cousin, who's just finishing her pediatric specialization in Stanford, her debt burden, $650,000. Okay, I mean, now, agreed that the young lady who goes to Stanford, specializes over there, is exceptionally smart. I have no doubt in my mind. Okay, so she will be able to pay down that debt at some point in time, right? However, what if she decides that she does not want to go run after the mighty dollar, and maybe she wants to work for a nonprofit? The reasons why she got into medicine in the first place. A young person of 16, 17, 18, when they decide that they want to be a doctor, majority of the time they're motivated by doing good to the world. It's a long haul, hard path. Usually their motivations are, I want to do good for the humanity. And now when they graduated with these piles of debt, and the fact that they have to become a money-making machine just to pay their bills, right? Because they've got insurance to deal with, they've got other stuff to deal with, and the pressure from insurance companies and senior doctors is to keep lowering their compensation. They're like, what the heck am I doing with my life? What choice have I made here? One last thing, and I promise I'm getting off. So one other young lady I met in Silicon Valley, I was working with this organization called Kiva. It's an exceptional organization, does loans across the globe, micro loans, but especially to women, hundreds of millions of dollars. They were starting a new program for the US called Kiva Zip for the underserved community in the US. So we were doing a pilot with them. And the young lady who was assigned to work with me, I go once a month to Silicon Valley, we spend time with her. So she tells me one time I go there that, oh, I'm moving on and here's my replacement and all that. And I could tell from working with her that she loved her job. I mean, you could tell. This woman loved what she did. And of course, she was exceptionally smart. So I find out that she had just graduated from Harvard Business School. And she was working for free for Kiva. And I said, well, you love this job, why don't you stay? I'm sure they would want to keep you. She goes, who's going to pay my loans? Now I have to go work for the next 10 years for a consulting firm and be a road warrior, and then I'll figure out what I want to do with my life. This is what we are doing to our next generation. And then asking them, go and compete with the rest of the world in innovation and entrepreneurship. Not a chance. Thank you.